Hi, I'm Caroline Levitt, co-founder of A Mighty Blaze, and this is a really extraordinarily special evening because we have Alice Hoffman here, and we're so excited. And we're also excited because we also are promoting Alice's Pink Pages, which is a virtual event with Alice and stories from your favorite authors like Kristen Hanna, Tayari Jones, Madeline Miller, Hillary Burton Morgan, Susan Orlean, Amy Tan, and emceed by Joyce Colehawk. I probably butchered that name. I'm so sorry. We will be putting up links so you can get tickets. This is an amazing thing. It's also having a special performance by cellist Yo-Yo Ma, and that's extraordinary. So I want to start my introduction to Alice, and then we'll be talking. So I was telling Alice before this meeting that I first became aware of her in a library many years ago. There was a book that I saw. We have Shelby, her dog, here too, by the way. There was a book that I saw with a photograph of this very young woman writer sort of rising up from a windowsill. And I remember looking at it thinking, something about that woman. I got to see what this book is. And when I saw that this book was written by somebody in her 20s, I instantly thought, oh my God, I haven't written anything. I have to do something. In fact, I showed Alice this book, White Horses. It's from 1986. It was the first book of hers that I bought, and I've kept it ever since because it really meant a lot to me. So here's the official bio of Alice Hoffman. Alice's first novel, Property Of, was written at the age of 21 when she was studying at Stanford and published shortly thereafter. It's a great book. If you haven't read it, you should go and get it. She's published over 30 novels, 3 books of short fiction, 8 books for children and young adults. Here on Earth was an Oprah Book Club choice. Practical Magic was made into a movie at Warner Brothers, and I think I remember reading that every single actress in town was gunning for a role in that movie. They just really wanted to do it. She's written At Risk, Local Girls, which was the proceeds of that was donated to help create the Hoffman Breast Center at Mount Auburn Hospital in Cambridge. She's written a number of novels for young adults, including Aquamarine, Green Angel, Green Witch, Incantation, which Publishers Weekly chose as one of the best books of the year. And it is. It's a great book. Hoffman's work has been published in more than 20 translations and more than 100 foreign editions. You can guarantee that when we have literature on Mars, Alice's books will be there. Her novels have received raves and notable books of the year from the New York Times, Entertainment Weekly, the LA Times, Library Journal, People Magazine. She's also worked as a screenwriter, and I want to say that I actually saw Independence Day, which was a wonderful movie. In fact, I remember one of the lines is it when Karen Quinlan is visited by her boyfriend. He says, "Oh, you have a house," and she says something like, "No, it's not a house without you in there." And I remember hearing that line, thinking, "That's a really good line. I could learn from that line." Alice's teen novel Aquamarine was made into a film with Emma Roberts. Her short fiction and nonfiction have appeared in the New York Times, Boston Globe, and other magazines. Dove Keepers got a rave from Toni Morrison, who called it a major contribution to 21st century literature. It was adapted for television in 2015. Her most recent novels have received even more raves, and they're all New York Times bestseller. We have The Museum of Extraordinary Things, The Marriage of Opposites, and Faithful. The Rules of Magic is the prequel to her cult classic, Practical Magic. It was selected as a Library Reads and Indiana's Licks pick. It was one of the most anticipated books on iTunes. Reese Witherspoon picked it as her 2017 book club read. Let's see what else. And, of course, the Book of Magic is the 3rd in her series of magic, and it will be released in October of 2021. Pre-sales are important. indie bookstores are important. So please, everybody, we're going to be posting links to the bookstore so you can buy every single one of Alice's books. And absolutely, you should buy every single one of her books because there's not a single one that is terrible. They're all magnificent. So, Alice, thank you. I'm so excited for you.
How are you?
I'm good. So, first, I want to talk about the Pink Pages event because it's just a wonderful, wonderful thing that you do. Can you please tell us how that came about and how people can donate and help and attend?
Yes, thank you. I really appreciate it. This is really our 20th or our 21st year of fundraising. We created a breast center at Mount Auburn Hospital in Cambridge, Massachusetts. It doesn't turn anyone away, no matter what their insurance situation is, what their financial situation is. It's something I'm really proud to be involved with. I'm a breast cancer survivor, and when after my treatment, which was great, I asked my doctors what could I do to give back, and they said, do something local, and that's what we've done and created a state of the art breast center. We've raised $6 million.
It's incredible.
And we've had the most incredible writers over the years. I just want to read you some of the names of the people who've come.
Please do.
Elizabeth Berg, Judy Blume, Geraldine Brooks, Lisa Genova, Doris Prince Goodwin, Wally Lamb, Lois Lowry, Celeste Eng, and as you said, this year it's just an incredible lineup. And what people have done is they are all telling little personal stories, and very short and very moving, I think. And Amy Tan, Susan Orlean, Madeline Miller, and these are like my favorite writers. Kristen Hanna, Hilary Burton Morgan, who's an actress who's wonderful and who wrote something called The Rural Diaries, which is terrific. Tayari Jones, another of my favorite writers. And Yo-Yo Ma is doing a special little thing for us. He's just incredible. I met him at my friend Joyce Culhawick's house when he was doing a fundraiser for his group, Silk Road. And if you don't know them, they're just incredible musicians from all over the world. So I just feel really lucky to be involved with this center. And it's on May 5th. It's an hour long. It does cost money, but all the money is 100% goes directly to the breast center and to helping people fight breast cancer. Did I talk too much?
No, you did not. That's a wonderful, wonderful thing. I actually remember the astonishing essay you wrote when you were first diagnosed with breast cancer. I loved it because it was so real. There was an image of you moving from your couch to writing and then moving back to the couch. I think it really was about how writing saved you. And I wanted to know, when you look back at that essay now, is there anything you wish that you had known then that you know now, beside, you're being healthy and, doing so much good?
Yeah, I feel really lucky to be healthy because it is a really serious disease, and a lot of people do not end up with such a happy ending as I have so far. I did feel like writing saved me. And every time I was having anything horrible done to me, I was plotting out a novel. I was actually writing a book called The River King. And so every time I had like any kind of bone scan or any kind of radiation or anything like that, I was in my book. And, I think it's just a coping mechanism. It's probably a little psychotic or something, but that's where I go when I'm in pain, and it was extremely helpful. It was hard for me to write about it, but it's funny because my oncologist, then I could only write about cancer for a while. And, she said to me, it's going to change. First, it's the main character. Then it'll be the main character's best friend. Then it will be the main character's grandmother. And it will get farther and farther away. And in a way, she was right about that.
That's right. There was somebody in Lost Girls, Local Girls, who had breast cancer, if I remember right. Yeah, that's right. I think that's a lot what writing does, where whether you know it or not, you're sort of getting lost in your issues and solving them. I want to talk about the magic in your novels. I know that I've read that you grew up on fairy tales, very specific kind of fairy tales from your grandmother. And the thing is that you deal with magic, but yet what's so interesting is that magic feels absolutely real. Like you never doubt it, whether it's a woman who loves a man who's lived with wolves or witches. So, of course, I want to know, what's your personal worldview about magic? Do you think it exists? Do you think we create it?
Well, for me, magic is all about reading and writing. It's all about literature, all about words. And what you were saying, my grandmother was Russian, and I grew up, sitting on the bus in New York City with her, and her telling me about her childhood in Russia, which felt like a fairy tale. And so I just equate literature with magic, with fairy tales, with myth. And I always have thought that that's the original literature. That realism is kind of the new kid on the block, and really, this is what literature is all about. I mean, you look at a page and it's just marks on a page. And then for you as a reader, it becomes a whole world. I mean, for me, that's magic.
That's right. I think I just read a quote from Albert Einstein that said, when you're reading to your children, read them fairy tales. And when
Yeah.
you're done with that, read them more fairy tales. And it's true if you look at it, because some of those fairy tales are so brutal. And yet, instead of having to protect children from them, it's exactly what you want. I loved all those books when I was a kid.
Yeah, because I felt when I was a kid, maybe you felt this way too, that fairy tales told me the truth, and they didn't speak down to me.
Right, right.
Back then, a lot of modern children's books did kind of speak down to you, but not fairy tales. They're really just what you said, brutal and real.
Oh,
And
yeah. You remember the one about I forget which one, I forget the name of it, but it was 7 brothers, and the sister is knitting for them, and she doesn't have enough yarn to turn one of her swan brothers into a human. So when he becomes a human, he's a human with a swan arm. And it was so, wow, it was just such an amazing, amazing story. So let's talk more about magic. Did you know that the magic series would be so many books? And how do you know that this one is the last one? Do you know that for sure?
this is actually the 4th one. It is I'm pretty sure it's the final one.
Okay.
I know I wrote the first one about 25 years ago, or more than 25 years ago. I don't even remember, to tell you the truth. And I never thought I would write any more about this family or anything. But over the years, readers have been asking me for more about the family. And instead of writing a sequel, I wanted to write a prequel, because I'm always interested in going back in time and back into history to find out, why we are the way we are, how we came to be this way psychologically, and
Right.
how our families influence us. So I went back in time and wrote The Rules of Magic, which took place in the 60s in New York City, in Greenwich Village, my favorite place. Oh, I'm sorry, that's my dog.
The dog likes it. Shelby likes it.
I don't know what she just heard, but
No, that's fine. That's good. That makes this better. So is this last book, the Book of Magic, that's coming in October, do you feel that it's solidified everything that the others have laid groundwork for, that love is at the root of everything and curses can be reversed? Oh, it's
the cover. I know, it's pretty, right?
Gorgeous cover.
I felt like there were certain questions that needed to be answered. And actually, a lot of those questions were raised by my readers who wrote to me. And I realized I wanted to know that. I wanted to know the same things that they did. So I feel pretty comfortable. If I ever were to write about this family, it would never be in the same way. This is the end of this story.
Do you miss them now that you're not writing about them?
Well, I cried a lot when I wrote this way.
I bet you did.
I really did feel like I've been with them for, 25 years, and it does feel really sad to lose some of them.
Do you ever feel like you see your characters walking on the street?
No.
Oh, really?
No, never.
Yeah, sometimes I do, but I never approach them. Never approach them.
No, because I don't think of my characters in a physical sense. I'm more inside of them.
Inside of them, okay.
I don't think of them that way.
Okay.
If somebody says, "Who do you think should what actor do you think should play, Vincent or Franny?" I'm like, I can't even think that way, because I don't see them. I just feel them.
So that leads me to a question, like, in the films that have been made of your work, did you feel, when you watched them, did you feel like, yes, they got the gist of what I was trying to say, or did you feel like this is a totally different story with totally different characters?
Well, I didn't feel either. I feel like, I was a screenwriter for a long time, so I knew the process, and I know that the book isn't the movie and the movie isn't the book.
Right.
So, but I think it becomes something else. It becomes its own creation, and it has other people's imaginations and other input, and it's not exactly yours anymore. But what's
Right.
one thing that I felt when I went onto the set of Practical Magic, the person that I felt the most like in my creative life was the set designer who created the world. And when I went to
Right.
her office, it was kind of like what I do is like, putting up pictures and putting up images and kind of building a world. I felt most like her.
It's funny that you said that because I don't want to turn my computer around, but I have what I call my character wall, where I just go through Humans of New York and I find pictures of people in turmoil who I think look like my characters. I have a woman who's doing this. I have a man who's doing this. I have a lot of people doing, but you live with it and it's true. You are building a world. Um, there's a thread in the Magic series, and actually, I think in all your books, about women handing down what they know to other women. There's sort of a continuum of like what we get from the past and how we can push it forward into the future. So I want to know what was handed down to you and what are you handing down?
Well, I was raised really in a household of women and was very close with my grandmother and my mother, especially my grandmother. And so I feel like I got so much in so many different ways. And both my grandmother and my mother were women who worked, and that wasn't so frequent back then.
Right.
Talking about a book of mine that I wrote called Seventh Heaven, which takes place in 1959, 1960. And when I was growing up, my mother was the only mother that I knew who worked. So, I kind of learned about, you should always be able to support yourself. You should always have a job. You should always be able to make a living. But I don't know. I feel like I learned everything from them.
So there's always outsiders in your book, beginning with Property of, which is such a good book for any book, whether it's a first book or a last book, about a young girl who gets involved with a gang, and the women are the property of the gang members. So it makes me wonder: did you feel like an outsider when you were growing up, and do you still in any way?
Well, I kind of think that every writer feels like an outsider because I think
Yeah.
a writer, you have to kind of stand back, and you're also spending all this time alone when other people are with other people. I often think, I wrote Practical Magic over a beautiful summer in a shed instead of like being with other people or going to the beach. I think by definition we're kind of outsiders, but I do think that everybody feels like an outsider at some point
Hmm.
for one reason or another. So I think it's in a way a bonding kind of thing to be an outsider.
Yeah, I think so too. I think a lot of people spend a lot of time not wanting to be known as an outsider, not realizing that that's the thing that's going to connect them much more deeply with other people, I think.
Yeah.
So, I want to talk about your writing process. Also, I want to remind people out there if you have any questions for Alice, please put them in and we will start taking them. I mean, put them in now and we'll start reading them off at around 7:30.
And Can I,
What's your
can I just say one thing? I forgot to.
Sure.
We are also having an auction at Pink Pages.
Oh, great. Yes, please
Yeah.
talk about that.
And it's some awesome things. One is kind of a stay in an incredible castle in Ireland where I've stayed before. That was the most.
Wow.
It's the most haunted castle in Ireland. Another one is an incredible trip to Nantucket. I'm involved in Nantucket and the Nantucket Book Festival. And the other is that I will come to your book group. So those are the three things
Wow.
that. I mean, I'll come virtually. I'm not really going anywhere right now, but I'll come virtually. I'm sorry. But
No, that's great. And that's an important thing to put out there. Can you tell us about your writing process? Has it changed? And do you share pages with anyone before it goes to your agent or your editor?
my process has really changed. I don't even remember what it used to be, to tell you the truth. I what I do now is I tend to put things on these big poster boards. I think I've always done that to some extent. Like I'll have all the plants and all the animals, and this is all about like building the world. And then sometimes I'll also have the plot, where I'll do it on post-it notes, and then I can move it around. I think that's something I actually learned from screenwriting. Kind of to break
Right.
things down. I don't necessarily do it at the beginning. I tend to do it after I have a draft to more focus it and change things. I rewrite a lot. And I would say like my last two books, I think I probably cut 100 pages from both of them. And that meant I had to write 100 pages. So I always think it's funny when you were talking before about the story about the Swan brothers and the knitting. I am a knitter, a bad knitter, but I wrote a knitting book with my cousin Lisa Hoffman called Fairy Knitting. And I always think that writing and knitting are very similar in the way in knitting it's a process and you have to take it apart. And it's so painful to take it apart. If you make
Yep.
a
It
little
becomes a mess. It becomes a
right,
mess when you
are
take it
you
apart.
a knitter?
Oh yeah, I knit. I through the pandemic, I knit a. Oh, I should have brought some up. I discovered this great sweater pattern. It's just two rectangles for the front and back, and another two rectangles for the sleeves. And I made 8 sweaters. And you can be very zen about it and get in that same. I'll send you the pattern. You'll love it. It's so easy.
I like to say, but if you make a mistake, sometimes you're left with like 2 arms and no body,
Right.
It feels like that when you're writing a novel, where you have to,
Right.
you have to unravel a lot of it, and it's very painful and difficult. I still find it as difficult, if not more difficult, than when I was starting out. It doesn't get easier for me, and sometimes I feel like I don't know how I did it. I don't know how to write a novel. It's a process every time. Do you feel that when you're?
Yes, I think it's writer's. I call it writer's amnesia. You
Yeah.
start another one and you think, how did I do this? What do I do? And it always moves towards a point where I will go into my husband just office and say, I'm not doing this anymore. I hate it. I can't do it.
Yeah.
And he'll say, you say this every time. And I say, no, I don't. And he says,
No,
yes, you do.
yes. I mean,
It's writer's amnesia.
I feel the same way. Yeah. And I feel sometimes when I read my work, I feel like, who wrote that? Do you ever have that? I mean, like, who wrote that? I don't remember.
Yeah, I don't remember any of it. I don't remember any of it. The whole thing is, so do you share pages with anybody or do you just read them out loud? What do you do?
I do have some people that I do show pages to before I show it to my agent. I think you have to be really careful who you do that with.
Yes.
Because it can really mess you up. And
yes, it can.
Because I feel like most writers, like with the first draft, they just want to have somebody say, I love it, keep going.
Yes.
And that's really important for that first part so that you finish it and you don't start like doubting yourself and, tearing yourself apart. So I think that's what you want the first time around. And then the next time around, you want someone who'll say, I think it would be better. The beginning doesn't work for me. I think there's too much information, whatever the problem.
Right. That's interesting.
You want to go to somebody who doesn't have like their own agenda going on.
Yes, that's true. That's true. I want to talk about fame. Did you expect when you were a brand new writer that you would have this much recognition and be this beloved? And having this fame, does it feel like you thought it would? Does it make it easier for you to write or harder because people want so much more from you?
Well, thank you for saying that. I don't feel that about myself, but I have to say for probably the first 20 years of my career, I never told anyone I was a writer.
What? Really? Why not?
I'm not exactly sure, but I felt part of it,
Wow.
I felt like it was too private. I didn't want to share it. And I never talked about my writing. I never told people I was a writer. This was, before the internet and everything. I think, when people would write to me, I did write back and I did have some relationships but usually I just, I was really kind of not a public writer. I think one of the reasons I'm more of a public writer now is probably because of being online. And
Right. Well, when did you feel then that you had made it? Was it at risk, which did really well, or was it the Oprah book, or?
Well, I have to say, I've been writing for so long that my idea of making it wasn't having like fame or money or that kind of thing. It was the 60s and that's not what people were thinking about. And I was out in California and Ken Kesey was a big deal. It was more like you want to write a really good story. And that was it. And what I really wanted to do was impress my mentor, who was Albert Gerard, who was my professor. That was it for me. If he liked it, I really didn't care. I still, he's no longer alive. I would still only care what he thought. And Toni Morrison also.
And Toni Morrison, yeah. That was amazing. You certainly impressed her. That was like and
Very
rightfully
wonderful.
so. That was
I
totally wonderful.
wasn't thinking. I think things have changed in publishing, and it's a lot about. And in some ways, I feel bad for people who are starting out because I think they have to think so much about marketing and publishing,
Yes,
all these things.
platform.
Yeah, that we didn't think about back then because like nobody cared and there was no money anyway. And,
Right.
and it just kind of happened for me in a way that I didn't expect it to happen. And in fact, I remember my uncle knew a really famous agent. He was like Norman Mailer's agent, and he sent some of my stories to him when I was in graduate school. And the guy said, nice stories, but completely not commercial. She's never gonna make it or marry.
Whoa, I love that.
Yeah.
And you still remember it though, right?
Oh yeah. But I didn't care.
Oh, you didn't care because you just sort of knew. But what's also great is that you use, whether you believe you have fame or not, you use it to do good in the world. I mean, this Pink Pages event is just wonderful. And you seem to be very accessible to your legions of fans.
Thank you.
Legions of fans.
I think we have fun going to it. And it's on May 5th.
I want to talk about your range because you write about stuff from physical and from historical and biblical times to contemporary, from fantasy to very realistic. Is there anything that you can't do or you choose not to do?
Well, I think for me, I don't think I could like write a book where I spent like, 70 days in the mind of a serial killer or something like that.
Right.
Because I have to feel something for my characters. I can't imagine, waking up every day and being in the head of somebody who I felt was horrible.
Right.
That would bring me no pleasure or no joy. So I can't imagine doing that.
Okay. And I wanted one more question, and then we'll take questions from other people, which is, where do you see yourself when you're 90?
I don't see myself at 90.
Really? You don't? You don't think about that?
No, I feel like I'm lucky to be here today. I'm not thinking like that at all.
Okay. Tom, do we have any questions for Alice? Alice has said that her mother was Bohemian. Alice, would you say you were a Bohemian? And did she accept your choice to be Bohemian when you were a teenager? That's
I
a good
remember
question.
my mother didn't clean the house for 30 years. She
Oh,
was
I
too busy.
love your mom.
She was really radical, and she didn't have expectations of me, which is bad and good. I mean, I actually think back in those days that there were not that many expectations of girls anyway. She didn't
No, they
expect me
were not.
or anything like that. I never thought I was going to go to college. She went to college when she was 16, but she was really kind of into her own life. She wasn't. You know what she was? She was a great friend and a terrible mother.
That's interesting. That's
Yeah,
really interesting.
somebody's mother. So luckily, I had a grandmother. She just wasn't, but she was so much fun and such a great friend. I talked to her 3 times a day, until the day she died. So it was a very complicated relationship. I don't know if my writing meant anything to her, or it wasn't that.
Really?
And it wasn't very public, like I didn't do readings back then, or I don't know. But I remember driving with her. Oh, when my first story was published, I was in California, and she lived on Long Island, so I was with her, and we drove to the 8th Street bookshop I think that's what it was, in Greenwich Village, and got a copy of Fiction magazine, which you couldn't get many places. And that was really fun. But, I just feel like, my choices were kind of my own. I didn't really have a parent.
Was your grandmother your mother's mother?
Yeah, my mother's
Yeah.
mother.
Okay, so it's 3 generations. And did your grandmother approve of your mother?
Not at all. No.
Oh, I love it. I love this. Is great.
Didn't approve of her. Not at all.
That's wonderful. Liz asks, I'd love to hear what it was like returning to the Owens family and bringing all the love experience you've accumulated in the ensuing years.
Oh, thank you for that
Good question.
Well, I wish I had known that I was going to write 4 books, because I would have made some sort of outline. It was very complicated and confusing. I had to go along with the other books where maybe I wouldn't have wanted to. So I think the characters are changed. during the course of the books, I think, they know a lot more. I think they do a lot of foolish things, as we all do when we're young. And the most foolish thing is that in the original book, which is called Magic Lessons, the ancestor of the Owens family puts a curse on her own family, and that is, she does it in kind of like in the heat of the moment, in this passionate state of when she's about to be killed, and she doesn't realize that when you and she also curses someone else. When you curse somebody else, you're also cursing yourself as well.
Right.
And so it's generations of trying to undo what was done. And I think that happens to us. What happens in our background, in our families, the ghosts in the nursery kind of thing. Like, we don't even understand how we've been affected by our great great grandmother's situation, and how that has come down to us through our families.
That's right. That's right. There's all sorts of genetic memories too that they're just starting to look at now, which is really interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, another question, Tom. Hillary says, so wonderful to hear this conversation. I'd like to hear a bit more about how you go about building the world of your books.
Well, I think I start off usually doing research, and kind of a broad research, and then I start taking notes about. I'm really interested in domestic life and how that shows what a society is like, what a character's like. I'm interested in what food and the animals, and what the houses were made of. So, like, I read a lot of nonfiction because I'm doing research all the time. And then, I will make these poster boards where I have like different colors for different characters and different plants. And it's kind of like playing before you start the actual work of it.
I just want to interrupt with a question about that. So, at what point do you feel like when you're starting a novel that you can't discard it? And have you ever discarded a novel and just said this
Yeah,
novel doesn't work?
yeah, I've discarded quite a few, several. And I think there is a point where in fact, I've discarded ones that other people have later written about a particular subject, but for me, I just couldn't do it. Um, I think there comes a point where you just can't make it work. And sometimes you put it away and you can use different parts of it. Maybe,
Yeah,
don't you find that?
yeah.
There's,
I bastardized one novel. I couldn't make it work. I just couldn't do it. But there was
yeah,
one section I liked, so I pulled that out and gave it to somebody else.
yeah. I mean, I never think it's wasted. Like the same thing with knitting. I never feel like it's wasted. I feel like something from what you've written will probably show up somewhere else.
Okay. Oops, from Michael. Are there any writers that make you think, wow, I wish I could write like him or her?
Well, I don't really wish I could write like anyone, because I really feel like
Yeah.
your writing is your voice and your writing is you. It's like your fingerprint, like no one else can be you. However, I wouldn't have minded writing Wuthering Heights.
Oh,
I
yes.
would love to have written Beloved. I guess those are my two favorite books. Um, and every once in a while, I just read a book I just fall in love with. I felt that way about Matt Haig's new book, The Midnight Library, which I just loved it. And but I never feel like I wish I'd written it. I just am happy to be the reader of it.
Another question. Ruthie, so were you able to undo anything you didn't like in past novels for the sequels? That's interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. I had to kind of go with what I had. Um, I might have kind of fudged a few things that I needed to, and time wise, but I couldn't really undo what was already done.
Right. I want to interrupt with another question. Do you have books that are your favorites? Or
So,
books that you sort of wish like I shouldn't have I like it, I'm glad I wrote it, but it's not where I
no,
would want it to be.
no, I don't feel that. No, I don't really feel that. But no, I'm usually, the book is the book. It just is what it is, kind of. And um, I don't want to change it or have it be different. I would just write a different book if I wanted it to be.
Right, that's true. That's true. Is there any one character from your books that you still think about or wonder about?
Well, I mean, there was there were characters in Rules of Magic that I still wondered about and wanted to go back to. But usually, I always feel like when the story's done, it's done, and
Right.
it belongs to the reader, and it's just it's no longer your story.
Was there anything difficult or challenging about seeing your story and characters move to the big screen?
Well, I think it's, like I said, I had a lot of experience writing in Hollywood, so I knew it wasn't going to be exactly my book. It was going to belong to someone else. It was going to be different. But it's kind of an amazing thing to think you sit in a room and you think up a story, and then there are like hundreds of people who are working on a film to make the story come to life. It's kind of an amazing feeling, and very strange feeling that something you imagined is now real.
Would you go back to writing scripts at all? Or do you like writing scripts? Yeah.
Yeah, I would.
Okay. Do we have what books are on your nightstand from Ellen?
Oh, what books are on my nightstand? Gee, I right now I'm just really doing research, so I can't really talk about what books are on my nightstand.
That's like the question that the New York Times Book Review always asks somebody, what books are on your nightstand? And I always say everybody always has such esoteric books. And I keep thinking, why doesn't anybody ever say, well, I'm reading Charles Dickens and I'm reading the Weekly World News or
You know,
something really sort of lowbrow?
I'm reading a wonderful book published by Algonquin called Liberty by a terrific
Oh,
author,
Caitlin Greenwich.
Cambridge,
Yeah.
and actually she just won an award that has my name from Plowshares
Yep.
magazine, and it's wonderful, and she's wonderful.
She is wonderful. Any other questions, Tom? Is there a book from your childhood that has stuck with you all these years as inspiration or motivation? Good question.
Well, there's a lot. I mean, I go back to my childhood books all the time, but I mean, the writer that affected me the most was the writer that I read when I was like 12 and 13. Actually, I think I read him earlier, with Ray Bradbury, and I always
Oh,
go back to
yeah.
his books. I love him. Um, I just feel like reading his books really kind of changed my life, and I think like everyone who's 12 should. I mean, he also adults, but like there's such a like morality in his book.
Yeah.
There
Yeah.
really is good fighting evil, I always felt like he was kind of a father figure to me, Ray Bradbury, through his writing, and then I got to meet him later on before he died, and felt really lucky, and I just think he's just such an amazing writer, and kind of changed my life.
His stories also have the same quality that a lot of yours do, where it's talking about magic or sci-fi, but it's very always grounded in reality, which sort of reminds me of The Twilight Zone, which was the same thing, where Rod Serling started The Twilight
Oh,
Zone because the TV station wouldn't let him write political dramas.
yeah.
So he couched them all in this wonderful, wonderful sci-fi stuff.
Yeah,
And
Rod Serling was amazing, and just amazing. I love The Twilight Zone.
yeah, me
And
too.
and one of the things that was really fun that I did in the book that I just wrote, the Book of Magic, is I dropped the names of the books that I love throughout the book.
Oh, that's great. That's fun. Do you use friends' names ever in your books?
Mm-mm,
Okay.
no. Do you?
No, 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 no. I don't like to do that, but I do. I prefer to make names up and to make up the names of restaurants because that's always fun.
Yeah, I don't really. I'm not that interested in reality.
Yeah, me either. Any other questions? Don't be shy. Ask questions. So, in the meantime, I will ask a question I always ask, which, what are you obsessed about right now?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I think I'm, obsessed about how our world has changed in the past year. Well, really, in the past 4 years or 5 years, whatever, since 2016, and in such kind of horrifying ways, and
Mhm.
um, just trying to remember, that there's good in the world, and I think I'm obsessed with that. I just feel, very sad for so many people who are struggling so much right now. So I think I'm obsessed with that. But I finally stopped watching the news, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, I can't watch the news at night. It's too disturbing. I can only look at the news in the morning, and that riles me up for a while, and then I can sort of let it go.
Yeah,
So,
I can only watch Rachel Maddow. I'm addicted.
yes, 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 because she always has sort of a smile on her face while she's, telling us these terrible things that might be happening or have happened. What question do you wish that I had asked you?
Oh, gee, I don't know. I think you asked me great questions. I can't think of a thing really.
Okay.
I really
Um, let me think, see if I can think of another question.
well, we did.
Does anybody else have any other question? Um, how do you choose character names?
That's a really hard question. I don't really know the answer to that. Some of them come with their names. Sometimes I have to change their names. I don't know. I think name is really important for a character,
Yeah, it is.
and when
Sometimes it doesn't look good on the page. It
yeah,
just doesn't feel right.
but also I feel like I've used so many names, and I don't want to use the same names over and over again. So, it becomes difficult.
Do you have, I know we sort of talked about fame before, but when you have a book coming out, do you suffer the same fears that most writers suffer, where you worry about, like, what are the initial reviews going to be like? Or do you feel that you have such stature that it doesn't matter to you?
I think it matters to everybody. I mean, nobody likes to hear bad things about their work or their art. It's hard. I try not to read reviews. I don't want to read reviews. I don't think it, because I always feel like, the good ones you don't believe and
Right.
they
And the
stay with you. And what's the point? No one remembers those reviews anyway. That's not the thing that really matters. It's not the reason I'm a writer. So, but of course, I have the same feelings as you. I think we all feel the same.
Right, right. That's it's sort of like I would you say that I mean there are stages in writing. The first stage is you come up with the idea and you're writing the book and you're in the world of the writing. And that's the stage I think all of us love, right? And then it's when the book is out there in the world. And of course we love it when readers, come up to you and say, "Oh, Alice, this is a wonderful book and it meant so much to me," and blah blah blah. And it's very different than seeing a review in the paper. And as you said, you're right. Even if it's a good review, sometimes the good reviews are wrong. They will get facts wrong. Not that they're wrong that it's a good book, but they will get facts wrong or names wrong, and it's always a bizarre occurrence. So,
I think it's just, if you're going to do that, if you're going to be a writer and artist, that's just part of what happens.
part of it, yeah,
If you let it tear you down. I mean, it's true. We were talking about who do you let read your work. I mean, it can happen in a classroom where people
right.
are super hypercritical and can tear you apart. And I just think it's you choose whose voice you listen to and who matters to you, and you know. I,
I think that's good advice for everything in life, actually. So, when you were going to school, and you were studying writing. Did you find the classes outside of that one professor who you really loved helpful, or did you find that you felt like you had to write a certain way, which was the way the other students were writing?
well, no, because I wasn't at Iowa.
Oh, okay.
I was someplace else. I was at Stanford, and it was a very small program, and there was no like set way to write. And I just felt really lucky to have this time in my life to write, which people don't ordinarily get. And so it was a year of being supported and being able to write, and I just felt really lucky. The best thing that my professor did is that the first day of class, he said, "You're going to have to write 50 pages a week." And we were so angry and so annoyed. And, so I went home and wrote my 50 pages. And when we came back the next week, he's like, "Oh, well, I didn't mean that. Seriously, I was kidding." And he wasn't really kidding. He wanted us to know that if you're going to be a writer, you have to
You have
write.
to do it.
You have to write. Yeah.
Well, another question. In a book called The 13th Tale, the writer describes her future book characters are like children surrounding her and clamoring for her attention. Do you have future characters waiting to be written?
I think I have future character. Well, I have like outlines and plots and pieces of books. So yeah, but I don't feel like they're bothering me.
Well, I want to thank all of you for coming. I especially want to thank Alice Hoffman for
Oh,
coming here to the Blaze. It was like so generous of you and so wonderful. Please, everybody, we have links for the Pink Pages event that you will want to go to. If you don't want to go to it, donate to it. It's such an important, wonderful event. And, you know, it's virtual, so you don't have to leave your home. You should go. And please, we have links to bookshop.org or your favorite indie bookstore. Support them. Buy every single one of Alice's books. She has 30 of them. There must be one that you could get several copies of. And I most particularly want to thank you, Alice, for being so generous and so open and so lovely.
thank you for doing all you're doing for writers right now in the time of COVID. It's really great to
You're
see what
welcome.
you're doing. I really appreciate that. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. And thank you, everybody. And we'll see